She was sitting alone at 1 a.m., silent, still, and invisible to the world, until a teenager on a busted bike changed everything. It was 12:47 a.m. when Malik turned onto South Bishop Avenue in Fort Wayne, Indiana. His shift at the 24-hour Quick Mart had run late again. That temporary schedule was starting to feel permanent. The night air hung thick and unmoving, like the whole neighborhood had paused mid-breath. Streetlights flickered above him, buzzing faintly, the same way they always did on this side of town. A few porch lights glowed dimly, most likely set to automatic. The block was asleep. All that moved was Malik, his rusted BMX bike, and the soft thump of his book bag against his back. Inside the bag, a flattened peanut butter sandwich, his crumpled physics notebook, and a pair of grimy work gloves he'd forgotten to take off. Halfway home, head down, legs sore, he almost didn't see her. At first, she looked like a heap of discarded blankets near the boarded-up pharmacy. Maybe someone unhoused, curled up for the night. But something about the shape didn't sit right. He slowed, cautiously dragging one sneaker on the pavement. It wasn't trash. It was a woman, an older white woman, perched at the edge of the curb. Knees pressed together. Arms wrapped tight around herself. Her coat, probably expensive once, hung limp and stained at the sleeves. One shoe had a heel, the other looked like a hospital slipper. Her gray hair was wild, tangled, and her chin quivered with every breath. Malik glanced up and down the block. No cops. No headlights. Just him, her, and the dry rustle of wind sweeping dead leaves across the sidewalk. She hadn't noticed him. He could have kept riding. Maybe he should have. Stories like this don't always end well for kids who look like him. Helping strangers can go sideways fast. But he didn't keep going. He stepped off his bike, one foot still on the pedal. Then he cleared his throat. "Ma'am, you all right?" She flinched, looked up. Her eyes, pale and wide, locked on his face, not afraid, exactly. Just, lost. Like she wasn't sure if he was real. I don't know where I am," she whispered. Her voice was dry, papery. Malik shifted his weight, scanned the street again. The Quick Mart was 3 blocks back. There was a night guard, but that felt far. Too far. "You live around here?" She shook her head slowly. I don't think so. You got a phone? Or some kind of ID?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out a handkerchief. That was it. He exhaled, rubbed the back of his neck. "What's your name?" Silence. Then, "Margaret. I think." He crouched beside her, slow, careful not to spook her. "All right, Miss Margaret. I'm Malik. You hungry? Thirsty?" She nodded faintly. "I think I had tea. Earlier. Or maybe yesterday." There was something childlike in the way she said it, like every sentence came with a question mark. And she didn't look at him the way people usually did. Not at his hoodie. Not at the grease stains on his jeans. Just, at him. He reached into his backpack and offered her a bottle of water. She took it with both hands, like it might disappear. Drank slow. When she finished, her shoulders dropped, just a little. "You cold?" She didn't answer. But the goosebumps on her arms did. Without a second thought, he shrugged off his hoodie and draped it over her shoulders. "Better?" She nodded once. Now came the hard part. What do you do with a lost woman at 1 a.m.? He could call 911. But something told him, not yet. "My house ain't far," he said gently. 5 minutes by bike. My grandma's usually up late. She'll know what to do." Margaret blinked. I don't have any money." Malik laughed softly. "I'm not a cab, ma'am. You don't need money. Just trust me." For a moment, she didn't move. Then she reached out, slowly, and placed her hand in his. He helped her up. She was unsteady, but not weak. Together, they shuffled toward his bike. "I'll ride slow," he said. "You okay sitting on the back pegs?" "What's a peg?" Malik smiled for the first time that night. But just as he started helping her onto the bike, something shifted. A shadow moved in the alley. Malik's head snapped toward the sound. A stray cat darted out, knocking over a glass bottle that clinked and rolled into the street. He exhaled, shoulders tense. Looked back at Margaret. "You good?" She nodded, gripping the bike like it might vanish. He lowered the kickstand and steadied her onto the back pegs, keeping one hand on hers. "You ever ride double before?" "Double, what?" "Never mind. Just hold on to my shoulders." He pushed off, the bike wobbling slightly under her weight. Her knees bumped against his sides. He took the back roads, quieter, darker, where the silence felt heavier, more honest. They rode in silence for the first 2 minutes. "You okay back there?" he asked. I think so," she replied. "Then, this isn't a taxi, is it?" "Nope. This is Malik's Midnight Express." She giggled, a small, surprised sound. "I used to ride bikes. When I was a girl. My brother had one. Red, with a bell. You remember his name?" She was quiet for a long time. "I think it started with an R." They passed a boarded-up laundromat, a Baptist church whose sign still read "He is risen." Malik swerved to avoid a pothole as they entered a darker street. "I think I had a husband," she whispered. He let her speak. "Tall. Wore glasses. Said I walked too slow." "Did he love you?" She looked up at the night sky. "I think so." They rode on. "You got family?" she asked suddenly. "Yeah. My grandma raised me. Mom passed when I was 10. Never met my dad." Her grip tightened slightly on his shoulders. "I'm sorry." "It's okay. My grandma's solid. You'll like her." The houses started to change. Less cracked siding, more trimmed lawns. Still modest. Still working class. But steadier. The kind of block where people waved if they knew you, and didn't if they didn't. Malik's thighs burned as they reached his street. He stopped in front of a small brick home with a chain-link fence and 2 faded lawn chairs on the porch. One porch light was still on. He helped Margaret off the bike. Her knees wobbled, but she stayed upright. "You sure she won't be mad I'm here?" "Not if you tell her what kind of tea you like." That earned a faint smile. He wheeled the bike through the gate and up the steps. Knocked gently. A moment later, the door opened. His grandma stood there, robe wrapped tight, satin scarf tied neatly over her hair. She squinted. "Malik? What in the world?" "I brought someone, Grandma." Her eyes shifted to Margaret, who was trying to straighten her coat. "She's lost," Malik said quickly. Didn't know what else to do. His grandma didn't say anything at first. She just looked. At Margaret. Then at Malik. Then she stepped aside. "Bring her in." When he first found her on the curb. He looked her in the eyes, calm and steady. "Then we'll make sure they remember you the right way," he said. The knock on the door was soft, almost hesitant. Grandma stood and answered it, revealing 2 uniformed officers, 1 man and 1 woman, both with the kind of expression that said they'd been doing this job for a long time, but it still hadn't gotten easy. The female officer stepped forward first, speaking gently. "Hi there, ma'am. Margaret, right?" Margaret held the fork in her hand like a question mark, the pie now forgotten. She nodded slowly. We've been looking for you, the woman continued, kneeling slightly to meet her eye level. You're safe now, okay? Your son's on his way. He's been worried sick. Margaret looked over at Malik, her brow furrowed. I said something to him. I don't remember what. What if he's angry? Malik shook his head. Then he'll get over it. People say stuff. Doesn't mean they stop loving you. She held his gaze a moment longer, then slowly placed the empty plate on the coffee table and stood. Her knees trembled again, but she straightened herself. The officers didn't rush her. They let her move at her own pace. Margaret turned to Grandma and took her hand once more. You keep a warm house, she said, voice quiet. Smells like care. Grandma smiled, just a flicker of it, but enough. You're welcome here any time, Miss Margaret. They walked her to the door. Malik followed them out onto the porch, his hoodie still wrapped around her shoulders. As she was helped gently into the back of the cruiser, she turned and waved. Thank you, Malik. I think you kept me from disappearing. He didn't know what to say to that. So he just nodded, lips pressed together, watching as the car eased into the street and pulled away. The night returned to stillness, the wind whispering low through the fences. Malik stood there a moment longer, listening. Then Grandma's voice came soft behind him. You did good tonight. He turned. I just couldn't leave her. You weren't raised to, she said. That's what makes all the difference. They went back inside. The house felt heavier now. Not in a bad way, just full of something important. Malik glanced down at his hands, still faintly sticky from the pie. He looked up. Grandma? Yeah, baby. We still got more of that pie. She chuckled, heading toward the kitchen. Always. As Malik sat back on the couch, backpack finally dropped on the floor, he realized something strange. For the first time in a while, the world didn't feel quite so heavy. Maybe it was the pie. Maybe it was knowing that sometimes, when you stop, even just for a minute, you can pull someone else back from the edge. Even if you're just a kid on a busted bike, pedaling through the quiet at 1 a.m. 2 weeks later. Malik stood in front of the cracked mirror in his room, fixing the collar of his shirt. It wasn't the best, secondhand from a church thrift box, but it was clean and ironed. Grandma insisted. His bike, newly repaired with a bent spoke and mismatched pedal, leaned against the porch outside. He hadn't heard from Margaret since that night. He asked a few people, but most didn't know much, just that she'd been taken in, evaluated, and was probably staying with family now. That was supposed to be the end of it. But it wasn't for Malik. That night had stayed with him, echoing in ways he didn't expect. He saw her in the way the old bus driver looked off into the distance too long. He saw her in the way a woman at the corner store counted change like she didn't remember what it was for. So when his school counselor announced a community service project at the local senior center, Malik signed up. The first day, the building smelled like bleach and old newspapers. He nearly turned around. But then he saw her. Margaret. Hair combed, eyes brighter. Sitting by a window with a jigsaw puzzle spread out in front of her. She didn't notice him at first. He approached cautiously. Miss Margaret. She looked up, puzzled at first, then her face bloomed with recognition. Pie boy. He grinned. That's me. You look taller, she said. Or maybe I'm just sitting lower. He sat with her, slowly, piece by piece, working through the puzzle. It was a picture of a big oak tree in autumn, leaves bursting red and gold. The kind of thing that took time and patience. Margaret hummed softly while she worked, a tune Malik didn't know but liked anyway. A month later. Margaret had improved. She remembered more now, faces, names, routines. Sometimes she even laughed, that raspy laugh like paper crinkling. But some days were hard. Some days, she didn't remember Malik. On those days, he still sat with her. Because that's what mattered. His time at the center became routine. Not just with Margaret, but with others. Mr. Jensen, who told stories about boxing in the Navy. Miss Eleanor, who made a mean batch of butter cookies. And Malik, he became something rare, reliable. And word got around. One morning, the center director pulled Malik aside. She handed him a sealed envelope and said, "This is for you. From Margaret's son." Inside was a letter, written in careful block print. Malik unfolded it, heart-thumping. "Dear Malik. I don't know how to thank you for what you did that night. My mother didn't remember me when I first saw her. She barely remembered herself. But she remembered you. The boy with the pie and the hoodie. She's doing better now. You gave her something I couldn't, a moment of peace, a moment of dignity, when she needed it most. She says you kept her warm. That means everything to me. Enclosed is a gift, not charity, just gratitude. Use it however you choose. I hope it helps you like you helped her. With deepest thanks. Andre." There was a check inside. Malik's breath caught. Not a fortune, but enough. Enough to fix his bike properly. Enough to buy a new backpack. Maybe even take Grandma out for a real dinner somewhere with cloth napkins and bread baskets. He folded the letter and tucked it into his pocket. His bike could wait. There were still puzzles to finish. 6 months later. The local news did a piece on the senior center. Youth making a difference. They filmed Malik wheeling in a cart of juice boxes and graham crackers. He spoke for 30 seconds on camera, awkward but honest. "I just think, people forget the folks who built the world we're living in. I don't want to be one of those people." Grandma cried when she saw it. So did Margaret. Final scene. The sun was setting on a quiet spring day. Malik rode down his street, new bike tires humming against the pavement. A few neighborhood kids waved at him. He waved back. At home, Grandma was on the porch, a fresh pie cooling on the railing. "Peach," she called out. "Your favorite." He smiled, slowing to a stop and leaning the bike against the fence. "You know," he said, "maybe when I grow up. I wanna open a place. A pie shop." He shook his head. "A home. For people like Margaret. Safe, quiet. A place where they don't get lost." Grandma's eyes twinkled. "Sounds like the world could use more places like that." He nodded, taking a bite of warm pie straight from the tray. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, it really could." 1 year later. The once-worn path to the senior center had become familiar under Malik's sneakers. The staff now called him Mr. Reliable. He had his own name badge. Every Tuesday and Thursday after school, he was there, serving juice, playing dominoes, listening to stories that most people didn't have time for. Margaret had good days and bad. But even on the bad ones, she still asked for the pie boy. And that was enough for Malik. But it wasn't just about Margaret anymore. It was about all of them, Mr. Jensen, who gave Malik an old pocket watch on his 17th birthday, Miss Eleanor, who insisted on teaching him how to knit, in case you ever need to fix your own socks one day, and even Mr. Richards, who rarely spoke but once clapped Malik on the back and said, "You're doing good, son." Malik's world was growing. He was no longer the quiet kid from the other side of town. His teachers noticed the change. His grades went up. His confidence grew. He joined the debate club. He even started helping younger students with their reading. One afternoon, his counselor pulled him aside. "There's a scholarship," she said. "It's competitive. For students doing impactful community service. You should apply." Malik blinked. "A scholarship? For college? She nodded. For social work, non-profit management, whatever you want. I think you'd be perfect. For the first time, Malik let himself imagine it: classrooms, campus walkways, a dorm room with books stacked high. Not just surviving, but thriving. Becoming the kind of man who could open that home he'd dreamed of. A place with dignity built into the walls. That night, he told Grandma. She smiled softly. Your mother would be proud. Malik swallowed hard. I hope so. She would. I know it. He started the essay the next day. A few weeks later. A letter came in a thin white envelope with an official-looking seal. Malik opened it with trembling fingers, Grandma standing right behind him. Congratulations, it read. You've been selected. They didn't shout. They didn't scream. They just stood there in silence, Malik holding the paper like it was fragile. And then Grandma hugged him. Tight. Unmoving. You're gonna change the world, boy, she whispered. One soul at a time. A soft autumn breeze carried leaves across the courtyard of the Haven. The once empty lot was now alive, with laughter, music, and the scent of baked goods wafting from the kitchen. The walls were painted in warm, welcoming colors. There were murals of elders and children side by side. No one was forgotten here. No one was overlooked. Malik, now 21, stood beside a bronze plaque near the entrance. The Haven, a place for healing, for dignity, for us all. Beneath the words, a smaller inscription read. Dedicated to Margaret Holloway and every voice that's ever been silenced. She had passed quietly the winter before, peacefully, with Malik by her side. She never saw the Haven completed, but she knew it would be. Malik had promised her. And he kept it. Inside, residents played cards in the sunroom. Teens from local high schools volunteered after class, reading aloud, painting nails, serving meals. Elders told their stories, and, for once, they were heard. Fully. Malik sat in his modest office at the back of the building, surrounded by thank you notes, hand-drawn pictures, and photos from the center's ribbon-cutting ceremony. A local journalist had called him a changemaker, but Malik had laughed at that. I'm just the kid who walked home from school, he'd said, and saw someone who needed help. He didn't build the Haven alone. It had taken a community, his counselor, his grandma, neighbors who donated, architects who volunteered, even a retired contractor who had offered to supervise construction after reading about the project in the newspaper. And the story had spread, picked up by local TV stations, then a national morning show. Viewers had written letters. Donors had reached out. Other cities were now asking how to replicate it. And Malik? He had begun to think even bigger. A young boy, no older than Malik was that first day, walks hesitantly through the door of the Haven, holding a paper tray of apple slices. Nervous. An elderly man beckons him over. They sit. The boy offers a slice. The man smiles and nods. A connection begins. Malik watches from down the hall, unseen, then turns and walks away. There's more work to do. Another proposal to write. A grant to secure. A new site to visit. But in this moment, he knows. The cycle has started. And this time, it's rooted in dignity, in hope, and in pie. Fade out. Thread of time end screen rolls.